Now I come to this governing clause which I just referred to with regard to the second 5-year plan, namely that the second 5-year plan should be based on the physical needs of the people. You will remember that yesterday the President also emphasized the necessity for basing planning on the people's physical needs. Our first 5-year plan was based on the data and the material we had at our disposal, as well as on things that were actually being done at the time. Take these big river valley schemes. All these things were done at the time and we had no choice but to continue them. We had to accept what had been done. Of course, we added one or two new schemes and rearranged the priorities. That is to say, our plan was largely based on the finances available and consisted in taking up those schemes which were most useful. But it was limited planning, not planning in the real sense of the word. The conception of planning today is not to think of the money we have and then to divide it up in the various schemes, but to measure the physical needs, that is to say, how much of food the people want, how much of clothes they want, how much of housing they want, how much of education they want, how much of health services they want, how much of work and employment they want, and so on. We calculate all these and then decide what everyone in India should have of these things. Once we do that, we can set about increasing production and fulfilling these needs. It is not a simple matter because in calculating the needs of the people, we have to calculate on the basis not only of an increasing population but of increasing needs. I shall give you an instance. Let us take sugar. Our people now consume much more sugar than they used to, with the result that our calculations about sugar production went wrong. Now, why do they eat more sugar? Evidently, because they are better off. If a man getting 100 rupees finds his income increased to 150, he will eat more sugar, buy more cloth, and so on. Therefore, in making calculations, we have to keep in mind that the extra money that goes increases consumption and thereby higher needs of the goods. Then we decide how to produce those things in India. In order to meet a particular variety of needs, we have now to put up a factory which will produce the goods and that we need 5 years hence. Thus, planning is a much more complicated process than merely drawing up some schemes and fixing a system of priorities. Behind all these is another factor, finance. Finance is important but not so important as people think. What is really important is drawing up the physical needs of the people and then working to produce things which will fulfill such needs. If we have some deficit financing because you are actually putting money back through goods and services. Therefore, it does not matter how you manipulate your currency so long as your production is also keeping pace with it. Of course, there is the fear of inflation. We must avoid it. But there is no such fear at present in India. On the other hand, there is deflation. Nevertheless, we have to guard against inflation. We have to produce the equivalent of the money pumped in. Sometimes there is a gap between investment and production when inflation sets in. For example, let us say we put in 100 crores of rupees in a river valley scheme which takes 7 or 8 years to build. During the years it is being built, we get nothing out of it but expenditure. This can be balanced in cottage industry in which the gap in time is not large. Additional money that you have put in is not locked up for long. Therefore, in planning, we have to balance heavy industry, light industry, village industry, and cottage industry. We want heavy industry because without it, we can never really be an independent country. Light industry too has become essential for us. So has cottage industry. I am putting forward this argument not from the Gandhian ideal but because it is essential in order to balance heavy industry and to prevent the big gap between the pumping in of the money and production. But production is not all. A man works and produces something because he accepts others to consume what he produces. If there is no consumption, he stops production. Therefore, whether it is a factory or a cottage unit, consumption of what is produced should be taken care of. Mass production inevitably involves mass consumption, which in turn involves many other factors, chiefly the purchasing power of the consumer. Therefore, planning must take note of the need to provide more purchasing power too.